Dylan Carter had spent his entire adult life building walls. Walls to protect his daughter. Walls to keep his emotions manageable. Walls to survive each day without falling apart. He never imagined those walls would come crashing down because of one woman. His coworker's older sister, a CEO, who looked at him like she could see straight through every defense he had ever built. The moment Mason walked in and found them alone together in her living room, Dylan's shirt wrinkled, Vanessa's lipstick smudged, both of them frozen in guilty silence. Dylan realized he had destroyed the only friendship he had outside of work, possibly ruined his job, and fallen completely, hopelessly in love with a woman so far out of his league, it would have been laughable if it were not so terrifying. If you want to see how a single father's quiet life got turned upside down by a woman he never should have met, stick around until the end. And hit that like button and drop a comment with your city so I can see how far this story reaches. Dylan Carter did not consider himself special. He was 32 years old, worked in logistics at a mid-sized distribution company just outside Sacramento, and spent most of his free time making sure his 7-year-old daughter, Emma, had everything she needed. His life was predictable in a way that used to bother him, but now felt like safety. He woke up at 6, got Emma ready for school, drove her to the bus stop, worked his shift, picked her up from his mother's house, made dinner, helped with homework, and put her to bed. Then he sat on the couch with a beer he rarely finished and scrolled through his phone until his eyes got too heavy to stay open. He had been a single father for 5 years. Emma's mother, Jenna, had left when Emma was 2, deciding that motherhood was not what she wanted after all. Dylan had been angry at first, then heartbroken, then exhausted, and finally just numb. He stopped dating after a few failed attempts that only reminded him how little energy he had left for anyone else. His world shrank to Emma, work, and the occasional conversation with his coworker Mason, a 24-year-old who treated Dylan like an older brother and never seemed to run out of enthusiasm. Mason was the kind of guy who made friends with everyone. He talked too much, laughed too loud, and had the annoying habit of inviting Dylan to things Dylan had no intention of attending. But Mason was persistent, and eventually Dylan stopped saying no just to avoid the guilt of letting the kid down. So when Mason invited Dylan to a small dinner party at his house one Friday night, Dylan found himself agreeing even though he would rather have stayed home. "It's not a big thing," Mason said as they loaded boxes into a truck that afternoon. "Just my sister and a couple of her friends. She's in town for the weekend and I figured it would be cool for you to meet some new people." Dylan gave him a skeptical look. "Your sister?" "Yeah, Vanessa. She's older than me, runs some tech company in the city. Super smart, kind of intimidating, but cool once you get to know her." Dylan had met Mason's parents once at a company barbecue, but he had never heard much about the sister. He assumed she would be like most executives he had met, polished, distant, more interested in talking about work than anything real. "I don't know, man," Dylan said. "I'm not really the dinner party type." "Come on, Dylan, you never do anything. Just show up, eat some food, have a drink, and leave whenever you want. I promise it won't be weird." Dylan sighed. "Fine, but I'm not staying late." Mason grinned. "Deal." Dylan almost canceled 3 times before Friday evening. He stood in his bathroom, staring at himself in the mirror and wondering why he even cared what he looked like. He had not dressed up for anything in months. He settled on a dark button-down shirt that was not too formal and jeans that were clean. His hair was a mess, but he ran his hand through it a few times and figured it would have to do. Emma was spending the night at his mother's house, which meant Dylan had no excuse to leave early. He grabbed his keys and drove to Mason's place, a small house in a quiet neighborhood about 20 minutes away. When he pulled up, there were already a few cars parked outside. He sat in his truck for a moment, debating whether he could still turn around and go home. But Mason had texted him twice already asking when he would arrive, so Dylan climbed out and walked up to the front door. Mason opened it before Dylan could knock. "You made it!" Mason said, pulling Dylan into a quick hug that Dylan did not have time to avoid. "Come on in, everyone's in the living room." Dylan stepped inside and immediately felt out of place. The house was nicer than he expected, decorated with minimalist furniture and abstract art that probably cost more than Dylan made in a month. There were 5 people in the living room, all holding wine glasses and talking in that smooth, effortless way people did when they were used to being around other successful people. And then Dylan saw her. She was standing near the window, holding a glass of red wine and listening to something a man in a tailored blazer was saying. She was tall, maybe 5'8", with dark hair that fell just past her shoulders and sharp, intelligent eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. She wore a simple black dress that was elegant without trying too hard, and when she turned her head slightly and caught Dylan staring, he felt his stomach drop. Mason leaned in and whispered, "That's Vanessa." Dylan did not respond. He could not. Vanessa Hale did not look like someone's older sister. She looked like someone who belonged on the cover of a business magazine. Someone who made decisions that affected thousands of people. Someone who would never waste a second of her time on a guy like Dylan. Mason dragged him across the room. "Vanessa, this is Dylan, the guy I told you about." Vanessa turned fully toward him, and Dylan felt the weight of her gaze like a physical thing. She smiled, and it was polite but not quite warm. "Nice to meet you, Dylan," she said, extending her hand. Dylan shook it, trying not to notice how soft her skin was. "Yeah, you too." "Mason says you work together." "Yeah, logistics." "That sounds interesting." It was the kind of thing people said when they were being polite and had no idea what logistics actually meant. Dylan almost laughed, but he caught himself. "It's not," he said, "but it pays the bills." Vanessa's smile shifted slightly, like she was reassessing him. "Honest. I like that." Mason grinned and slapped Dylan on the back. "See? I told you she was cool." Before Dylan could respond, the man in the blazer, who introduced himself as Brad, some venture capitalist Vanessa knew, pulled her back into a conversation about market trends. Dylan stepped back, relieved to be out of the spotlight. He spent the next hour trying to blend into the background. He talked to a woman named Claire who worked in marketing, nodded along as Brad explained why cryptocurrency was the future, and ate more of the catered food than he probably should have. But the entire time, he was aware of Vanessa. She moved through the room like she owned it, laughing at the right moments, asking the right questions, making everyone feel like they mattered. And yet, there was something distant about her, like she was performing a role she had perfected, but did not entirely believe in. At one point, Dylan found himself standing alone near the kitchen, holding a beer he did not want. Vanessa appeared beside him, refilling her wine glass. "Not much of a party person?" she asked. Dylan glanced at her. "Is it that obvious?" "A little. You've been standing in corners all night. I don't really know anyone here." "You know Mason." "Yeah, but Mason knows everybody. I'm just the guy he works with." Vanessa studied him for a moment. "You don't give yourself much credit, do you?" Dylan shrugged. "I'm just being realistic." "Realistic or scared?" The question caught him off guard. He looked at her, trying to figure out if she was messing with him or genuinely curious. "Maybe both," he admitted. Vanessa smiled, and this time it reached her eyes. "That's the second honest thing you've said tonight." "Yeah, well, I'm not great at pretending." "That's refreshing. Most people I meet are excellent at it." Dylan did not know what to say to that, so he took a sip of his beer. Vanessa leaned against the counter, her posture relaxed, but her eyes still sharp. "Mason talks about you a lot," she said. "He thinks you're the most dependable person he knows." "That's just a nice way of saying I'm boring." Vanessa laughed, and the sound was unexpectedly genuine. "I don't think you're boring. You don't know me." "Not yet." The words hung in the air between them, and Dylan felt something shift. He told himself he was imagining it, that she was just being polite, that women like Vanessa Hale did not notice guys like him. But when she looked at him, it did not feel polite. It felt like she was seeing something he had not shown anyone in a long time. Before he could figure out how to respond, Brad called Vanessa back into the living room. She gave Dylan one last look, something unreadable in her expression, and then she was gone. Dylan left an hour later, making an excuse about needing to get up early. Mason walked him to the door, grinning like he knew something Dylan did not. "So what did you think?" Mason asked. "It was fine. Come on, man. You barely talked to anyone." "I talked to your sister." Mason's grin widened. "Yeah, I noticed. She seemed into you." Dylan laughed. "No, she didn't. Dude, I've known Vanessa my whole life. She doesn't waste time on people she's not interested in, and she talked to you for like 10 minutes. She was being polite. Whatever you say, man, but I'm telling you, she liked you." Dylan shook his head and walked to his truck. As he drove home, he tried to convince himself that Mason was wrong, that Vanessa had just been making conversation, that he would never see her again. But when he got home and climbed into bed, he could not stop thinking about the way she had looked at him, The way her smile had felt like a secret only the two of them shared. He told himself it did not matter. She was a CEO. He was a single father who could barely afford rent. There was no universe where someone like Vanessa Hale would ever be interested in someone like him. But late that night, as he was scrolling through his phone, he got a notification, a friend request on social media. From Vanessa Hale. Dylan stared at the screen, his heart pounding. He told himself not to read too much into it, that it was probably just a courtesy thing, but his finger hovered over the accept button for a long time before he finally pressed it. And then, almost immediately, a message appeared. Vanessa. It was nice meeting you tonight. Mason was right. You're more interesting than you let on. Dylan read the message 3 times before he figured out how to respond. Dylan. Thanks. You're not what I expected either. Vanessa. Good or bad? Dylan. Good. There was a pause. Dylan watched the 3 dots appear and disappear twice before her next message came through. Vanessa. I don't usually do this, but would you want to get coffee sometime? Just the 2 of us. Dylan's chest tightened. He knew he should say no. He knew nothing good could come from this. But he typed the only answer that felt honest. Dylan. Yeah, I'd like that. They met at a small cafe in Midtown Sacramento 2 days later. Dylan showed up 10 minutes early, his nerves so shot he almost turned around twice. When Vanessa walked in, she looked different than she had at the party. She wore jeans and a simple sweater, her hair pulled back in a loose ponytail. She looked younger, less guarded. Hey, she said, sliding into the seat across from him. Hey. They ordered coffee, and for the first few minutes, the conversation was awkward. Dylan did not know what to say to someone like her, and Vanessa seemed almost as uncertain as he was. But then she asked about Emma, and Dylan started talking. He told her about his daughter's obsession with dinosaurs, about the time she convinced him to build a fort out of every blanket in the house, about how she still asked about her mother sometimes, and Dylan never knew what to say. Vanessa listened without interrupting, her eyes focused entirely on him. And when he finally stopped talking, she said, You're a good dad. I'm trying. That's more than a lot of people do. Dylan looked at her. What about you? You got kids? Vanessa shook her head. No, I've been too focused on work. And honestly, I don't know if I'd be any good at it. You seem like you'd be good at anything. She smiled, but it was sad. That's what people think. But most of the time I feel like I'm just pretending I know what I'm doing. Dylan did not expect that. He had assumed someone like Vanessa had everything figured out. But sitting across from her, he realized she was just as uncertain as he was, just better at hiding it. They talked for 2 hours. Vanessa told him about growing up with Mason, about the pressure of running a company she had built from the ground up, about how lonely it was to be surrounded by people who only saw her as a brand. Dylan told her about the night Jenna left, about the panic he felt when he realized he was going to raise Emma alone, about how he had spent the last 5 years just trying not to screw everything up. By the time they left the cafe, Dylan felt like he had known her for years. I'm glad you said yes, Vanessa said as they stood outside on the sidewalk. Me too. She looked at him, and for a moment Dylan thought she was going to say something else. But instead, she just smiled and walked to her car. Dylan watched her drive away, his heart pounding in a way he had not felt in a long time. Over the next few weeks, they saw each other whenever Vanessa was in town. It started with coffee, then dinner, then long drives, where they talked about everything and nothing. Dylan learned that Vanessa hated small talk, that she preferred whiskey to wine, that she had a scar on her knee from a childhood bike accident. Vanessa learned that Dylan could not cook to save his life, that he still listened to the same music he loved in high school, that he was terrified of failing Emma. They did not talk about what they were doing. They did not define it or label it or acknowledge that it was becoming something neither of them could control. But the tension between them grew with every conversation, every glance, every moment they spent together. Dylan knew it was dangerous. He knew Mason would lose his mind if he found out. He knew Vanessa's life was too complicated, too public, too far removed from his own. But every time he thought about walking away, she would send him a message or show up at the cafe where they always met, and he would realize he did not want to stop. One night, as they sat in his truck outside her hotel, Vanessa turned to him and said, "This is a bad idea, isn't it?" Dylan did not answer right away. He stared at the steering wheel, his hands gripping it so tight his knuckles turned white. "Yeah," he finally said. "Probably. But you're not going to stop, are you?" Dylan looked at her. "Are you?" Vanessa's expression was unreadable. "No." They sat in silence for a moment, the weight of what they were not saying filling the space between them. And then Vanessa leaned over and kissed him. It was not gentle. It was desperate and hungry and full of everything they had been holding back. Dylan's hands moved to her face, pulling her closer, and for a moment nothing else existed. Not Mason, not Emma, not the impossible distance between their lives. Just the two of them, finally admitting what they both knew. When they pulled apart, Vanessa's breathing was uneven. "We can't keep doing this." "I know, but I don't want to stop." "I know." Vanessa closed her eyes and leaned her forehead against his. "What are we doing, Dylan?" "I don't know, but I can't walk away from you. Even if it ruins everything? Even then." A week later, Vanessa invited Dylan to her house. Mason was supposed to be out for the evening, working a late shift, and Vanessa said she wanted to cook dinner for him. Dylan knew it was a bad idea. He knew that going to her house, being alone with her, was crossing a line they would not be able to uncross. But he went anyway. Vanessa's house was exactly what Dylan expected: modern, expensive, and meticulously organized. She greeted him at the door in jeans and a t-shirt, her hair down, and Dylan realized he had never seen her look so relaxed. "I should warn you," she said as she led him inside. "I'm not a great cook." "That makes two of us." They ended up ordering takeout and eating on the couch, talking and laughing like they had known each other forever. Dylan felt the tension between them building with every passing minute, and he could see it in Vanessa's eyes too, the way she looked at him, the way her hand lingered on his arm, the way she leaned just a little too close. And then, without thinking, Dylan kissed her. This time, there was no hesitation. Vanessa kissed him back, her hands tangling in his hair, and Dylan pulled her onto his lap. They did not talk. They did not question it. They just let themselves fall into the moment they had been avoiding for weeks. Dylan's hands moved to the hem of her shirt, and Vanessa pulled back just enough to look at him. "Are you sure?" she whispered. "Yeah." "You?" "Yeah." And then they were kissing again, harder this time, and Dylan's mind went blank. He did not think about Mason or Emma or the consequences. He just thought about Vanessa, about how much he wanted her, about how right this felt even though it should not. But then the front door opened. Dylan froze. Vanessa pulled back, her eyes wide with panic, and then Mason's voice echoed through the house. "Vanessa, you home?" Dylan's heart stopped. He looked at Vanessa, who was already scrambling off his lap, smoothing her shirt, trying to look normal. Dylan stood up, his mind racing, trying to figure out what the hell he was supposed to do. Mason appeared in the doorway, and his eyes went from Vanessa to Dylan and back again. He did not say anything at first. He just stared, his expression shifting from confusion to suspicion to something darker. "Dylan," Mason said slowly, "what are you doing here?" Dylan opened his mouth, but no words came out. Vanessa stepped forward, her voice calm but shaky. "Mason, we were just what?" Mason's voice was sharp now. "Because it looks like—" He stopped himself, his jaw tightening. He looked at Dylan again, and this time there was something close to betrayal in his eyes. "You need to leave," Mason said quietly. Dylan did not argue. He grabbed his jacket and walked toward the door, his heart pounding so hard he thought it might explode. As he passed Mason, their eyes met, and Dylan saw the hurt there, raw and undeniable. "Mason," Dylan started, "just go." Dylan left. He climbed into his truck and drove home in a daze, his hands shaking, his mind replaying the look on Mason's face over and over again. When he got home, he sat in his driveway for 20 minutes, staring at nothing. And then his phone buzzed. "Vanessa, I'm sorry." Dylan did not respond. He did not know what to say, because he was not sorry. And that scared him more than anything. Dylan did not sleep that night. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment from the time he walked into Vanessa's house to the moment Mason's face went cold. He kept seeing the way Mason had looked at him, not angry, not yet, just confused and hurt, like he was trying to understand how his friend and his sister had ended up in a situation that looked exactly like what it was. Around 3 in the morning, Dylan gave up on sleep and went to the kitchen. He sat at the table with a cup of coffee he did not drink and stared at his phone. Vanessa had not sent anything after her apology. Dylan had typed and deleted about 15 different responses before deciding that nothing he said would make any of it better. He thought about calling in sick to work, but he knew that would only make things worse. Mason would know he was avoiding him, and Dylan had never been good at hiding. So when his alarm went off at 6, he dragged himself out of bed, got Emma ready for school, and drove to work like he always did. Mason's truck was already in the parking lot when Dylan arrived. Dylan sat in his own truck for a full 5 minutes, trying to figure out what the hell he was going to say. But there was no good answer, no explanation that would make Mason understand without making everything worse. Dylan walked into the warehouse and clocked in. He kept his head down, focusing on the inventory sheets in front of him, hoping that maybe Mason would not say anything. Maybe they could just pretend nothing had happened. Maybe Mason had not actually figured it out. But then Mason appeared beside him, his face unreadable. "We need to talk," Mason said. Dylan's stomach dropped. "Yeah, okay." They walked outside to the loading dock where no one else was around. Mason leaned against the wall, his arms crossed, and Dylan could see the tension in his shoulders. "So," Mason said, "you want to tell me what that was last night?" Dylan opened his mouth, but nothing came out. He did not know how to explain it without lying, and he was so tired of lying. "It's not what you think," Dylan finally said, and he hated how weak it sounded. Mason laughed, but there was no humor in it. "Really? Because it looked like you were about to hook up with my sister." Dylan flinched. "Mason, how long has this been going on?" "It's not how long, Dylan." Dylan ran a hand through his hair, his chest tight. "A few weeks. We've just been talking." "Talking?" "Yeah." "And last night?" Dylan did not answer. He could not. Mason shook his head, his jaw tight. "You know what? I don't even care what you were doing. What I care about is that you didn't tell me. I introduced you to her, Dylan. I thought you guys would get along, maybe be friends. I didn't think you'd—" He stopped himself, his hands clenched into fists. "I didn't think you'd go behind my back. I didn't mean for it to happen. But it did. Yeah, it did." Mason stared at him for a long moment, and Dylan could see the hurt behind the anger. "I trusted you, man. You're the only person at this place I actually give a damn about, and now I don't even know if I can look at you." Dylan's throat burned. "I'm sorry." "Are you? Or are you just sorry I found out?" Dylan did not have an answer for that. Because the truth was, he was not sorry about Vanessa. He was sorry about Mason, sorry about the timing, sorry about how everything had blown up, but he was not sorry about the way Vanessa made him feel, and he did not know how to explain that without sounding like a complete asshole. Mason pushed off the wall and started walking back toward the warehouse. "I need some time to think. Just stay away from me for a while." Dylan nodded, even though Mason was not looking at him anymore. He watched Mason disappear inside, and then he stood there alone, feeling like he had just lost the only friend he had. Dylan made it through the rest of the day by staying busy. He avoided Mason, kept his head down, and left as soon as his shift ended. When he picked Emma up from his mother's house, she asked him why he looked sad. Dylan told her he was just tired. That night, after Emma went to bed, Dylan finally looked at his phone. There were 3 messages from Vanessa. Vanessa: "Did you talk to Mason?" Vanessa: "Please tell me you're okay." Vanessa: "I need to know what happened." Dylan stared at the messages for a long time before he finally responded. Dylan: "He knows something's going on. He told me to stay away from him." The reply came almost immediately. Vanessa: "I'm so sorry. This is my fault." Dylan: "It's both our faults." Vanessa: "Can I see you?" Dylan closed his eyes. Every logical part of his brain was screaming at him to say no, to end this before it got any worse. But he typed the opposite. Dylan: "When?" Vanessa: "Tomorrow night. I'm staying at the hotel downtown." Dylan: "Okay." Bait. Dylan spent the next day in a fog. He went through the motions at work, avoiding Mason and trying not to think about how badly he had screwed everything up. When his shift ended, he drove straight to the hotel Vanessa had mentioned, a place way nicer than anywhere Dylan would ever stay on his own. She was waiting for him in the lobby, wearing jeans and a sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. When she saw him, her face crumpled with relief. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey." They did not hug. They just stood there for a moment, the weight of everything unsaid hanging between them. "Do you want to go up to my room?" Vanessa asked. "Or we can stay down here if that's—" "Let's go up." Vanessa's room was on the 8th floor, sleek and modern with floor-to-ceiling windows that overlooked the city. Dylan stood by the window, his hands in his pockets, while Vanessa poured herself a glass of water from the minibar. "I talked to Mason this morning," she said. "He's not answering my calls. He's pissed at both of us. He has every right to be." Dylan turned to look at her. "So what do we do?" Vanessa set the glass down and crossed her arms. "I don't know. I've been thinking about it all day and I don't have an answer." "We could stop." Vanessa's eyes met his. "Is that what you want?" Dylan hesitated. "No. Me neither." They stood there in silence, the truth settling between them. Dylan knew they should walk away. He knew this was only going to get messier, that Mason was never going to forgive them, that Vanessa's life and his life were never going to fit together in any way that made sense. But when he looked at her, none of that mattered. "I don't know what I am doing," Dylan said quietly. "I haven't felt like this in years, and I'm terrified, Vanessa. I'm terrified that I'm going to screw this up, or that Mason's going to hate me forever, or that you're going to wake up one day and realize I'm not worth all this trouble." Vanessa walked over to him and took his hand. "You're worth it." "You don't know that." "I do." Dylan looked down at their hands, his chest tight. "Why me? You could have anyone. You've got money, you've got success, you've got everything. Why the hell would you want some single dad who can barely pay his bills?" Vanessa's grip tightened. "Because you see me. Not the CEO, not the brand, not the woman everyone thinks they know. You see me, Dylan. And I haven't felt that in a long time." Dylan did not know what to say. He pulled her closer, and she rested her forehead against his chest. "I'm so tired," Vanessa whispered. "I'm tired of pretending I have everything figured out. I'm tired of being alone. I'm tired of being the person everyone expects me to be." Dylan wrapped his arms around her, and for a moment they just stood there, holding each other like they were the only two people in the world. "I don't know how to fix this," Dylan said. "Maybe we can't." "So what do we do?" "What?" Vanessa pulled back just enough to look at him. "We keep going, and we deal with whatever comes." Dylan searched her face, looking for any sign of doubt, but all he saw was determination. "Okay," he said, "but we're going to have to tell Mason the truth eventually." "I know. And he's going to lose his mind." "I know." Dylan exhaled slowly. "This is a disaster." Vanessa smiled, sad but real. "Yeah, it is." And then she kissed him, and Dylan stopped thinking about Mason or consequences or anything other than the way Vanessa felt in his arms. Over the next 2 weeks, Dylan and Vanessa fell into a pattern that felt both thrilling and dangerous. They saw each other whenever Vanessa was in town, meeting at her hotel or driving out to places where no one would recognize them. They talked about everything: Dylan's fears about being a good father, Vanessa's frustration with the constant pressure of running a company, the ways they had both convinced themselves they did not need anyone. But they also talked about the future, and that was where things got complicated. "I can't keep flying back and forth forever," Vanessa said one night as they sat in Dylan's truck outside her hotel. "My company's in the city. My life is there." "I know. And you're here. Emma's here." "Yeah." Vanessa looked at him. "So what does that mean for us?" Dylan did not have an answer. He had been trying not to think about it, trying to just live in the moment and not worry about the logistics. But the truth was, he had no idea how they were supposed to make this work. "I don't know," he admitted, "but I'm not ready to give up on this." "Neither am I." They sat in silence for a moment, the unspoken question hanging between them. And then Vanessa said, "I could move here." Dylan's head snapped toward her. "What?" "I could move here, or at least spend more time here. My company's stable enough that I don't need to be in the office every day. I could work remotely." "Vanessa, that's crazy?" "Yeah, I know. But I'm serious, Dylan. I'm tired of living my life for my company. I want something real, and this feels real. Dylan stared at her, his mind racing. You'd really do that? For you? Yeah. Dylan did not know what to say. No one had ever offered to change their life for him. Jenna had left because being with him was not enough. And now here was Vanessa, a woman who had everything, saying she would give up her life in the city just to be with him. I don't deserve you, Dylan said quietly. Vanessa smiled. Stop saying that. It's true. No, it's not. You're a good man, Dylan. You're a good father, and you make me feel like I'm more than just my job. That's worth everything. Dylan pulled her into a kiss, and for the first time in weeks, he let himself believe that maybe they could actually make this work. But then reality came crashing back down. Dylan was at work the following Monday when Mason cornered him in the break room. Dylan had been avoiding him for days, but there was no escaping it now. We need to talk, Mason said, his voice flat. Dylan set down his coffee. Okay. Are you seeing my sister? Dylan's heart pounded. He had known this conversation was coming, but that did not make it any easier. Yeah, Dylan said. I am. Mason's jaw tightened. For how long? A few weeks? And you didn't think to tell me? I didn't know how. Mason laughed bitterly. You didn't know how. Dylan, you're supposed to be my friend. You're supposed to have my back. And instead, you're sneaking around with my sister like I'm some kind of idiot. It's not like that. Then what is it like? Because from where I'm standing, it looks like you've been lying to me this entire time. Dylan ran a hand over his face. I didn't mean to lie. It happened, Mason. I didn't plan it. I didn't want it to be this complicated. But it is complicated, and now I'm stuck in the middle of it. I know, and I'm sorry. Mason shook his head. I don't even know what to say to you right now. Then don't say anything. Just give me a chance to explain. Explain what? That you're in love with my sister? Dylan froze. He had not said it out loud yet, not even to himself. But hearing Mason say it made it real. Yeah, Dylan said quietly. I think I am. Mason stared at him for a long moment, his expression unreadable, and then he turned and walked out of the break room without another word. That night, Dylan told Vanessa what had happened. They were sitting in his truck again, parked in the empty lot of a grocery store, and Vanessa listened without interrupting. He knows, Dylan said, and he's not okay with it. Vanessa closed her eyes. I was afraid of that. He asked if I was in love with you. Vanessa's eyes opened. What did you say? I said yes. Vanessa did not respond right away. She just looked at him, her expression soft and vulnerable in a way Dylan had never seen before. I love you too, she said quietly. Dylan's chest tightened. He had not expected her to say it back, not yet, but hearing those words made everything feel more real, more permanent, and more terrifying. What are we going to do? Dylan asked. We're going to tell him the truth, all of it. He's going to hate us. Maybe, but at least we'll be honest. Dylan nodded slowly. Okay, when? Soon. I'll talk to him first, and then we'll figure out the rest. Vanessa called Mason the next day and asked him to meet her for lunch. Mason agreed, though Dylan could tell from Vanessa's texts that the conversation had been tense. Dylan spent the entire afternoon at work, anxious and distracted, checking his phone every 5 minutes for an update. Finally, around 4, Vanessa called. How did it go? Dylan asked. Vanessa sighed. Not great, but not terrible either. What did you tell him? I told him that we're together, that it's serious, and that I'm not going to apologize for it. Dylan's stomach twisted. What did he say? He said he needs time. He's hurt, Dylan. He feels like we betrayed him. We did. I know, but we didn't do it to hurt him. We did it because we care about each other. Dylan leaned back against his truck, staring up at the sky. Do you think he'll ever forgive us? I don't know, but I hope so. What? Mason did not speak to Dylan for another week. He showed up to work, did his job, and left without saying a word. Dylan tried to give him space, but the silence was unbearable. He had lost friends before, but losing Mason felt different. Mason had been the one person at work who made Dylan feel like he was not invisible. And now that was gone. One night, as Dylan was putting Emma to bed, she asked him why he seemed sad all the time. "I'm not sad, sweetheart," Dylan said, pulling the blanket up to her chin. "Yes, you are. You don't smile anymore." Dylan forced a smile. "See? I'm smiling now." Emma frowned. "That's a fake smile." Dylan sighed. "You're too smart for your own good." "Is it because of work?" "Sort of." "Did you get in trouble?" "No, I made a mistake and now a friend is mad at me." Emma thought about that for a moment. "Did you say sorry?" "Yeah, but sometimes sorry isn't enough. Then you have to keep saying it until they believe you." Dylan smiled, this time for real. "You're right. I'll keep trying." Emma nodded, satisfied, and closed her eyes. Dylan sat there for a while watching her sleep and wondered how his 7-year-old daughter had more wisdom than he did. The breakthrough came 2 days later. Dylan was loading boxes into a truck when Mason appeared beside him. "Can we talk?" Mason asked. Dylan set down the box. "Yeah, of course." They walked outside, and for a moment neither of them said anything. Then Mason spoke. "I've been thinking a lot, and I'm still pissed, but Vanessa called me last night and told me that if I cut you out, I'm cutting her out too. And I'm not willing to lose my sister." Dylan nodded slowly. "I get it. I don't like this, Dylan. I don't like that you guys went behind my back. I don't like that I found out the way I did. And I really don't like that you're dating my sister." "I know. But I also know that Vanessa's happy, and I haven't seen her happy in a long time. So if you're the reason for that, then I guess I have to deal with it." Dylan exhaled, relief flooding through him. "Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Because if you hurt her, I swear to God, Dylan, I will make your life hell." "I won't." "You better not." Mason held out his hand and Dylan shook it. It was not forgiveness, not yet, but it was a start. That night, Dylan drove to Vanessa's hotel and told her what had happened. She cried, which surprised him, and Dylan held her while she let out all the tension she had been carrying for weeks. "I thought I was going to lose him," Vanessa said, her voice shaking. "You didn't. Because of you. Because of us." Vanessa pulled back and looked at him, her eyes red but hopeful. "So what now?" Dylan smiled. "Now we stop sneaking around. We do this for real." "You mean that?" "Yeah, I mean it." Vanessa kissed him, and Dylan felt something shift inside him. For the first time in years, he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, he deserved to be happy. Things did not magically get easier after Mason gave his reluctant blessing. Dylan had hoped that once the secret was out in the open, the weight would lift and they could just be together without all the guilt and tension. But reality was messier than that. Mason still looked uncomfortable every time Vanessa's name came up at work. Still went quiet when Dylan mentioned plans with her. Still had this look in his eyes like he was trying to reconcile the friend he thought he knew with the man dating his sister. And Vanessa's life was complicated in ways Dylan had not fully understood until he tried to fit into it. She had board meetings that ran late into the night, business trips that pulled her away for days at a time, and a schedule that made planning anything more than a quick dinner feel like negotiating a peace treaty. Dylan tried not to complain because he knew she was doing her best, but there were nights when he sat alone in his apartment after putting Emma to bed and wondered if they were fooling themselves into thinking this could work. The first real test came about 3 weeks after Mason had agreed to tolerate the relationship. Vanessa had been in town for 4 days straight, the longest stretch they had managed since everything started, and Dylan had gotten used to seeing her every evening. They would meet after he picked Emma up from his mother's house, grab takeout, and sit in his truck talking until it got too late and Vanessa had to drive back to her hotel. It was not romantic in any traditional sense, but it felt real, and that mattered more to Dylan than anything else. But then Vanessa got a call from her company's chief operating officer on a Thursday afternoon. Dylan was with her when it happened, sitting in a coffee shop downtown, and he watched her face shift from relaxed to tense in the span of about 10 seconds. "I have to go back to the city," Vanessa said after she hung up. "There's a problem with one of our investors. If I don't handle it in person, we could lose a major funding round." Dylan nodded, trying to keep his disappointment off his face. "Okay. When do you leave?" "Tonight." "I'm sorry, Dylan. I know we had plans this weekend." "It's fine. You've got a company to run." Vanessa reached across the table and took his hand. "It's not fine. I can see it on your face." Dylan looked down at their hands. I just, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to be with someone who's always leaving. I'm not always leaving. You're leaving right now." Vanessa flinched, and Dylan immediately regretted the sharpness in his tone. He pulled his hand back and rubbed his face. "I'm sorry," he said. "That wasn't fair." "No, you're right. I am leaving, and I hate it as much as you do." "Do you?" The question hung between them, heavier than Dylan had intended. Vanessa's eyes filled with something that looked like hurt, and Dylan felt like an asshole. "Of course I do," Vanessa said quietly. "Do you think I want to choose between my company and you? Do you think this is easy for me?" "I didn't say that." "But you're thinking it." Dylan did not argue because she was right. He was thinking it. He was thinking that Vanessa had built a life that did not have room for him, and no matter how much she said she cared, her actions kept proving otherwise. Vanessa stood up, grabbing her bag. "I need to go pack." "Vanessa, I'll call you when I get back." She left before Dylan could say anything else, and he sat there alone, staring at his untouched coffee and wondering if he had just ruined everything. Vanessa did not call that night, or the next day. Dylan told himself she was busy, that she was dealing with whatever crisis had pulled her back to the city, but by Saturday evening he was starting to think she was avoiding him. He sent her a text around 8. "Dylan, I'm sorry about what I said. I didn't mean it the way it came out." He stared at his phone for 20 minutes, waiting for a response that did not come. Finally, he gave up and put Emma to bed. When he checked his phone again an hour later, there was still nothing. Sunday morning, Dylan woke up to a message. "Vanessa, I'm sorry too. I'm just overwhelmed right now. Can we talk when I get back?" Dylan, "Yeah. When are you coming back?" Vanessa, "I don't know yet. Maybe Thursday." Dylan read the message 3 times, trying to figure out what she was not saying. He wanted to ask if they were okay, if she was having second thoughts, if she was realizing that this whole thing was a mistake. But he did not want to push her, so he just typed back. "Dylan, okay, I'll be here." The week dragged. Dylan went to work, avoided talking to Mason about Vanessa, picked Emma up every afternoon, and tried not to obsessively check his phone every 10 minutes. Vanessa sent a few messages throughout the week, mostly updates about her meetings and apologies for being distant. Dylan responded with understanding words that felt hollow, even as he typed them. By Wednesday night, Dylan was starting to think maybe they needed to have a serious conversation about whether this relationship was sustainable. He loved Vanessa, but he had been through this before with Jenna. The slow realization that someone you cared about was never going to prioritize you the way you needed them to. He did not want to go through that again. Thursday afternoon, Vanessa texted that she was back in town and asked if they could meet that evening. Dylan said yes, and they agreed to meet at the same coffee shop where they had fought the week before. When Dylan arrived, Vanessa was already there, sitting at a corner table with a cup of tea she had not touched. She looked exhausted. There were dark circles under her eyes, and her hair was pulled back in a messy bun that looked more practical than intentional. "Hey," Dylan said, sliding into the seat across from her. "Hey." They sat in awkward silence for a moment, and Dylan realized he had no idea how to start this conversation. "I've been thinking a lot this week," Vanessa finally said. "About us. About what you said." Dylan's stomach tightened. "Yeah?" "You were right. I am always leaving, and I hate that I keep doing this to you." "Vanessa, let me finish." She looked at him, her eyes tired but determined. "I've spent my entire adult life building my company. It's been my whole identity, and I've convinced myself that if I just work hard enough, if I just prove myself enough, then I'll finally feel like I'm enough. But it doesn't work that way. No matter how successful I get, I still feel like I'm not doing enough." Dylan did not know what to say, so he just listened. "And then I met you," Vanessa continued, "and for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe, like I didn't have to be the CEO all the time, like I could just be myself. But I've been so scared of losing my company that I've been holding on to it too tight, and in the process, I've been pushing you away." "I don't want you to give up your company," Dylan said. "That's not what I'm asking. I know, but I do need to figure out how to balance it better. Because I can't keep doing this. I can't keep choosing work over you and then expecting you to just be okay with it." Dylan reached across the table and took her hand. "So what do we do?" I've been thinking about what I said before, about moving here. Vanessa, you don't have to. I want to. I talked to my COO this week. We're restructuring the management team so I don't have to be in the office every day. I can work remotely most of the time and only go back for major meetings. It's not perfect, but it's a start. Dylan stared at her, trying to process what she was saying. You're serious? Yeah, I'm serious, because I don't want to lose you, Dylan. And I'm tired of living my life for a company that's never going to love me back. Dylan felt something crack open in his chest. He squeezed her hand, his throat tight. I don't want to lose you either. Vanessa smiled, and it was the first real smile Dylan had seen from her in over a week. So we're doing this? Yeah, we're doing this. Time. Vanessa started spending more time in Sacramento after that. She rented a small apartment downtown, close enough to Dylan's place that they could see each other more regularly, but far enough that it did not feel like they were rushing into anything. Dylan still had his doubts about whether she would really be able to step back from her company, about whether he was enough to make her happy, about whether Mason would ever fully accept them. But he tried to push those doubts aside and just focus on being present. Things got easier. Not perfect, but easier. Vanessa still had to travel sometimes, but she was better about giving Dylan advance notice and making time for him when she was in town. And slowly, Dylan started to let himself believe that maybe they could actually make this work. The next challenge came from an unexpected place. Emma. Dylan had been careful about introducing Vanessa to his daughter. He did not want to confuse Emma or make her think that every woman Dylan dated was going to become a permanent part of their lives. But after 2 months of dating, Vanessa asked if she could meet Emma, and Dylan ran out of excuses to say no. They planned it carefully. Vanessa came over on a Saturday afternoon, and Dylan introduced her as a friend. Emma was shy at first, hiding behind Dylan's leg and peeking out at Vanessa with wide, curious eyes. Hi, Emma, Vanessa said, crouching down to Emma's level. Your dad's told me a lot about you. Emma did not respond. She just stared at Vanessa, her little hands gripping Dylan's jeans. It's okay, sweetheart, Dylan said gently. Vanessa's nice. She just wants to say hi. Emma considered this for a moment, then stepped out from behind Dylan. Do you like dinosaurs? Vanessa smiled. I do. Do you? Emma nodded enthusiastically. I know all their names. Want to see my dinosaur collection? I'd love to. And just like that, the ice was broken. Emma dragged Vanessa into her room and spent the next hour showing her every single toy dinosaur she owned, explaining their names and habitats with the confidence of a seasoned paleontologist. Dylan watched from the doorway, his heart swelling with something he could not quite name. When Vanessa finally emerged from Emma's room, she was smiling in a way Dylan had never seen before, soft and genuine and completely unguarded. She's amazing, Vanessa said quietly. Yeah, she is. You've done a good job with her, Dylan. Dylan shrugged, uncomfortable with the compliment. I'm just trying not to screw it up. You're not. She's lucky to have you. They had dinner together, the three of them, and it felt shockingly normal. Emma chattered away about school and her friends and the science project she was working on, and Vanessa listened like every word mattered. Dylan watched them interact and felt something he had not felt in years: hope. After Emma went to bed, Dylan and Vanessa sat on the couch, exhausted but content. That went better than I expected, Dylan said. She's a great kid. She liked you. Vanessa leaned her head against Dylan's shoulder. I liked her too. They sat in comfortable silence for a while, and then Vanessa said, Do you ever think about the future? Like, what this looks like a year from now? Dylan tensed slightly. Sometimes. And? I don't know. I try not to think too far ahead. It freaks me out. Why? Because I've been let down before, and I don't want to get my hopes up just to have them crushed again. Vanessa lifted her head and looked at him. I'm not Jenna, Dylan. I know. Do you? Because sometimes it feels like you're waiting for me to leave, like you're just biding your time until I prove you right. Dylan did not know how to respond because she was not entirely wrong. He was waiting for the other shoe to drop. He had been waiting since the night Mason almost caught them together. I'm trying, Dylan said. I'm trying to trust this. But it's hard. I know, and I'm not asking you to be perfect. I'm just asking you to give us a real chance. Dylan looked at her, at the vulnerability in her eyes, and felt his defenses crack a little more. Okay, I'll try harder. Vanessa kissed him, slow and soft, and Dylan let himself sink into it. For the first time in a long time, he allowed himself to imagine a future where this actually worked. The following week, Dylan invited Vanessa to have dinner with him, Emma, and his mother. It was a big step, and Dylan was nervous about it, but he figured if Vanessa was serious about being part of his life, she needed to meet the people who mattered most to him. Dylan's mother, Linda, was a no-nonsense woman in her early 60s who had raised Dylan and his younger sister mostly on her own after their father left. She was protective of Dylan and Emma, and Dylan knew she would not hesitate to tell him if she thought Vanessa was not right for him. They met at a family-style Italian restaurant, and Dylan could see the nerves on Vanessa's face as they walked in. "Relax," Dylan whispered. "She's going to love you." "You don't know that." "I do." Linda was already seated when they arrived, Emma bouncing excitedly beside her. Dylan made the introductions, and Linda shook Vanessa's hand with a firm grip. "So you're the woman my son won't stop talking about," Linda said, her tone unreadable. Vanessa smiled nervously. "I hope that's a good thing." "We'll see." Dylan shot his mother a look, and Linda smirked. "I'm kidding. Sit down, both of you." Dinner started off tense. Linda asked Vanessa a lot of questions: where she grew up, what she did for a living, how she and Dylan met. Vanessa answered everything honestly, and Dylan could see her trying to make a good impression without coming across as fake. Emma, oblivious to the tension, spent most of dinner telling Vanessa about her latest dinosaur obsession and asking if Vanessa wanted to come to her school science fair. "I'd love to," Vanessa said, and Emma beamed. By the end of the meal, Linda had softened considerably. As they were leaving, she pulled Dylan aside while Vanessa was helping Emma put on her jacket. "She's good for you," Linda said quietly. Dylan looked at her in surprise. Yeah, I can see it in the way you look at her. You're happy, and you haven't been happy in a long time." Dylan felt his throat tighten. "Thanks, Mom. But if she hurts you, I'm going to have words with her." Dylan laughed. "I'll let her know." The next few weeks felt like a honeymoon phase, even though they had technically been together for months. Vanessa started coming over more often, sometimes staying the night after Emma went to bed. Dylan introduced her to his small circle of friends, and Vanessa invited Dylan to a company event where he felt completely out of place, but tried his best to fit in. Mason was slowly coming around too. He still made the occasional sarcastic comment about Dylan dating his sister, but there was less bite to it now. One night, the three of them had dinner together, Dylan, Vanessa, and Mason, and it almost felt normal. Mason told embarrassing stories about Vanessa as a kid, and Vanessa retaliated with equally embarrassing stories about Mason, and Dylan sat there laughing and feeling like maybe, just maybe, everything was going to be okay. But then Dylan made a mistake. It happened on a Thursday night. Vanessa had been in the city for a few days dealing with a merger, and Dylan was feeling frustrated and neglected. He did not mean to pick a fight, but when Vanessa called him that evening, he let his frustration slip. "How much longer are you going to be gone?" Dylan asked, his tone sharper than he intended. "I don't know, maybe another few days. Why?" "Because you've been gone almost a week, Vanessa, and I know your company is important, but I thought you were supposed to be stepping back." "I am stepping back, but this merger is a big deal. I can't just ignore it." "I'm not asking you to ignore it. I'm asking you to make time for me." "I am making time for you. I call you every night." "That's not the same as being here." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and Dylan could hear Vanessa's frustration building. "What do you want me to do, Dylan? Quit my job? Walk away from everything I've built?" "No, I want to feel like I matter as much as your company does." "You do matter, but my company is my responsibility. I have employees who depend on me. I have investors who trust me. I can't just drop everything because you're feeling insecure." The word insecure hit Dylan like a slap. He clenched his jaw, his chest tight with anger. "You know what? Forget it. I'll talk to you later." "Dylan." He hung up before she could finish. He sat on his couch, staring at his phone, and immediately regretted it. He wanted to call her back and apologize, but his pride would not let him. So he just sat there, angry and hurt and hating himself for starting a fight he did not know how to finish. Vanessa did not call him back that night, or the next day. Dylan told himself she was busy, that she was still mad, that she would reach out when she was ready. But by Saturday evening, he was starting to panic. He sent her a text. Dylan, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have hung up on you. Can we talk? The response came an hour later. Vanessa, I'm coming back tomorrow. We can talk then. Dylan spent the rest of the night barely sleeping, running through every possible scenario in his head. By the time Vanessa showed up at his apartment Sunday afternoon, he had convinced himself that she was going to break up with him. But when she walked in, she did not look angry. She just looked tired. Hey, Dylan said. Hey. They stood in the living room, the tension between them palpable. Dylan did not know how to start, so he just said the first thing that came to mind. I'm an idiot. Vanessa's lips twitched into a small smile. Yeah, you kind of are. I'm sorry. I was frustrated and I took it out on you. That wasn't fair. No, it wasn't, but I get it. I haven't been around as much as I should be, and I know that's hard for you. It is. But that doesn't mean I get to make you feel like your work doesn't matter. I know how important your company is to you. Vanessa stepped closer. It is important, but you're important too, and I need to do a better job of showing you that. I need to do a better job of trusting you. They stood there for a moment, just looking at each other, and then Vanessa reached out and took his hand. We're going to fight sometimes, she said. That's normal, but we can't let it destroy us every time it happens. I know. So let's make a deal. When we're mad at each other, we don't run away, we stay and talk it out, even when it's hard. Dylan nodded. Deal. Vanessa pulled him into a hug, and Dylan wrapped his arms around her, holding her tight. And for the first time since their fight, he felt like they were going to be okay. They kept their promise for about 2 months. Every time tension started building, they talked it through instead of letting it fester. Dylan learned to tell Vanessa when he was feeling neglected instead of bottling it up until he exploded. Vanessa learned to check in with Dylan more often, to give him advance notice when she had to travel, to make sure he knew he was not an afterthought. It was not easy, and there were nights when Dylan wanted to walk away because it felt like too much work, but he stayed. They both stayed. Emma was getting more comfortable with Vanessa, too. She had started calling her by name instead of Dad's friend, and she asked when Vanessa was coming over on the days she was not there. Dylan caught himself watching them together sometimes. Vanessa helping Emma with homework at the kitchen table, Vanessa braiding Emma's hair before school, Vanessa sitting on the floor playing dinosaurs with the same intensity Emma brought to it, and feeling something he had not felt since Jenna left. Like maybe his family did not have to be broken forever. But then things got complicated in a way Dylan had not anticipated. It started with a phone call from Jenna. Dylan had not heard from Emma's mother in over 3 years. She had called once or twice in the beginning, awkward conversations where she asked how Emma was doing, but never asked to see her. Then the calls stopped altogether, and Dylan convinced himself that was better for everyone. Emma barely remembered her mother, and Dylan did not see any reason to force a relationship that Jenna clearly did not want. So when Jenna's name appeared on his phone one Tuesday evening, Dylan stared at it for 3 rings before he finally answered. Hello? Dylan. Hi, it's Jenna. Like he would not recognize her voice. Like 3 years of silence had erased the sound of it from his memory. I know, Dylan said, his tone flat. What do you want? I want to talk to you about Emma. Dylan's stomach dropped. What about her? I want to see her. Dylan stood up from the couch, his heart pounding. You're joking. I'm not. I know I've been gone for a long time, but I've been thinking about her a lot lately. I miss her, Dylan. I want to be part of her life again. Dylan felt anger surge through him, hot and immediate. You don't get to do this. You don't get to disappear for 3 years and then just show up like nothing happened. I know I made mistakes. Mistakes? You abandoned your daughter, Jenna. You walked out when she was 2 years old and never looked back. I was scared. I was young and overwhelmed, and I didn't know how to handle it. So you left. And now you want to come back? Why? What changed? There was a long pause, and Dylan could hear Jenna's breathing on the other end of the line. When she finally spoke, her voice was quieter. I've been going to therapy, working on myself. And I realized I made the worst mistake of my life when I left you and Emma. I want to fix it. It's too late to fix it. It's not. She's my daughter, Dylan. I have a right to see her. Dylan's grip tightened on the phone. You gave up that right when you left. Legally, I didn't. I never signed away my parental rights. I can take you to court if I have to." Dylan felt like the floor had dropped out from under him. "You wouldn't." "I don't want to. But I will if you don't let me see her." Dylan closed his eyes, trying to control the rage building in his chest. "I need time to think about this." "Okay, but I'm serious, Dylan. I'm not going away this time." She hung up, and Dylan stood there in the middle of his living room, his phone still pressed to his ear, feeling like his entire world had just been turned upside down. Dylan did not tell Vanessa right away. He did not know how to explain it without sounding like he was falling apart, and he did not want her to see him like that. But 2 days later, when Vanessa asked him why he seemed so distracted, Dylan finally broke down and told her everything. They were sitting in his truck outside Emma's school, waiting for pickup, and Dylan stared straight ahead as he talked, unable to look at Vanessa while he said it. "She wants to see Emma," Dylan said. "After 3 years of nothing, she just calls out of the blue and says she wants to be a mom again." Vanessa was quiet for a moment. "What are you going to do?" "I don't know. Part of me wants to tell her to go to hell, but she's right. Legally, she still has parental rights. If I say no, she could take me to court. And I don't have the money to fight her. Dylan, you're Emma's primary guardian. No judge is going to take that away from you. But they might give Jenna visitation, and I don't know if I can handle that. I don't know if Emma can handle that." "Have you asked Emma what she wants?" Dylan shook his head. "She's 7. How is she supposed to make that decision?" "She's not. But she deserves to know what's happening." Dylan finally looked at Vanessa, and he could see the concern in her eyes. What if this ruins everything? What if Jenna comes back and Emma gets attached and then she leaves again? Then you'll be there to pick up the pieces, just like you've always been. Dylan wanted to believe her, but the fear was overwhelming. He had spent the last 5 years building a stable life for Emma, protecting her from the chaos Jenna had left behind, and now Jenna was threatening to destroy all of it. "I don't know if I can do this," Dylan said quietly. Vanessa reached over and took his hand. "You're not doing it alone, Mom." That night, after Emma went to bed, Dylan sat at the kitchen table with Vanessa and tried to figure out what to do. Vanessa suggested he talk to a lawyer just to understand his options. Dylan knew she was right, but the idea of getting lawyers involved made the whole thing feel more real, more terrifying. "What if I lose?" Dylan said. "You're not going to lose. You don't know that. I know you're a good father. I know you've been there for Emma every single day since Jenna left. That has to count for something." Dylan wanted to believe her, but he had seen enough stories about parents losing custody battles to know that the system did not always get it right. The next day, Dylan took a half day off work and met with a family lawyer Vanessa had recommended. The lawyer, a woman in her 50s named Patricia, listened to Dylan's story and then gave him the brutal truth. "Jenna has a legal right to see her daughter," Patricia said. "Unless you can prove she's a danger to Emma, a court is likely to grant her some form of visitation." Dylan felt his stomach twist. Even though she abandoned her? Abandonment is hard to prove if she's been paying child support. Has she? Dylan shook his head. "No, she hasn't sent a dime in 3 years." Patricia's expression softened. "That helps your case, but it doesn't guarantee anything. If she's serious about taking you to court, you need to be prepared." "How do I prepare?" "Document everything. Keep records of every time Emma asked about her mother, and you had to explain why she wasn't there. Keep track of every school event Jenna missed, every birthday, every milestone. Show the court that you've been the consistent parent, and Jenna hasn't." Dylan nodded, even though the thought of turning his life with Emma into evidence made him feel sick. "What if I just let her see Emma?" Dylan asked. "What if I agree to supervised visitation and see how it goes?" "That's an option, but you need to set clear boundaries. And if Jenna violates those boundaries, you document it and use it to protect yourself." Dylan left the lawyer's office feeling worse than when he arrived. He sat in his truck for a long time, staring at nothing, before he finally called Jenna. "I'll let you see Emma," Dylan said when she answered. "But it's going to be on my terms, supervised visits once a week for an hour. And if you miss even one visit, we're done." "Thank you, Dylan." "I won't let you down." "You already did," Dylan said and hung up. The first visit was scheduled for the following Saturday at a park near Dylan's apartment. Dylan told Emma the night before, trying to keep his voice calm and neutral. "Your mom wants to see you," Dylan said as he tucked Emma into bed. Emma's eyes went wide. "My mom?" "Yeah, she's going to meet us at the park tomorrow. Is that okay with you?" Emma was quiet for a long moment, her little face serious. "Why does she want to see me now?" Dylan did not know how to answer that without lying or making Jenna sound worse than he already had in his own head. "She made some mistakes," Dylan said carefully, "but she wants to try to fix them." "Are you going to be there?" "Yeah, sweetheart. I'm going to be right there the whole time." Emma nodded slowly. "Okay." But Dylan could see the uncertainty in her eyes, and it broke his heart. The next day, Dylan drove Emma to the park with Vanessa in the passenger seat. Vanessa had offered to come for moral support, and Dylan was grateful because he did not think he could do this alone. Jenna was already there when they arrived, standing by the swings and looking nervous. She was thinner than Dylan remembered, her hair shorter, and she wore jeans and a sweater that looked too big for her. When she saw Emma, her face lit up in a way that made Dylan's chest tighten. "Hi, Emma," Jenna said, crouching down to Emma's level. Emma hid behind Dylan's leg, peeking out at Jenna the same way she had when she first met Vanessa. "It's okay," Dylan said gently, even though it killed him to say it. "You can say hi." Emma stepped out slowly, her hands clasped in front of her. "Hi." Jenna's eyes filled with tears. "You've gotten so big, you probably don't remember me." Emma shook her head. "That's okay. We can get to know each other again." Dylan watched as Jenna tried to engage Emma in conversation, asking about school and her favorite things. Emma answered in short, careful sentences, her body language guarded. Dylan stood a few feet away with Vanessa, his arms crossed, every muscle in his body tense. "She's trying," Vanessa said quietly. "I don't care if she's trying. She doesn't deserve to be here." "Maybe not, but Emma deserves the chance to know her mother." Dylan looked at Vanessa, his jaw tight. "What if this is a mistake? Then you'll deal with it. But you can't protect Emma from everything, Dylan. Sometimes you just have to let things play out." Dylan hated that she was right. The visit lasted an hour, and by the end of it, Emma had warmed up slightly. She showed Jenna her favorite dinosaur toy that Dylan had brought, and Jenna listened with what seemed like genuine interest. When it was time to leave, Jenna hugged Emma, and Emma hugged her back, tentative but real. "Can I see you again next week?" Jenna asked. Emma looked at Dylan, and Dylan nodded. "Okay," Emma said. As they walked back to the truck, Emma slipped her hand into Dylan's. "Dad," she said. "Yeah?" "Is Mom going to leave again?" Dylan's throat tightened. He wanted to say no, to promise Emma that Jenna would stick around this time. But he could not lie to her. "I don't know, sweetheart, but no matter what happens, I'm always going to be here. Okay?" Emma nodded, but Dylan could see the worry in her eyes. The visits continued over the next few weeks. Jenna showed up every Saturday, on time and sober, and Dylan started to relax just a little. Emma seemed happier too, more open with Jenna, and Dylan wondered if maybe he had been wrong to be so resistant. But then Jenna started pushing for more. "I want to take Emma to dinner," Jenna said one Saturday after their park visit. "Just the two of us?" Dylan's guard went up immediately. "No. Dylan, I've been showing up every week. I've been doing everything you asked. I think I've earned a little trust." "You haven't earned anything. You get supervised visits, that's it. She's my daughter. And I'm the one who's been raising her for the last 5 years. I'm not letting you take her anywhere alone." Jenna's expression hardened. "I didn't want to do this, but if you're not going to be reasonable, I'll go back to my lawyer." Dylan felt his blood run cold. "You're threatening me. I'm reminding you that I have rights, and if you keep blocking me, I'll take you to court and let a judge decide." Dylan stepped closer, his voice low and angry. "You try that, and I will make sure the judge knows you abandoned your daughter for 3 years. I'll make sure they know you didn't pay a cent in child support. I'll make sure they know you only came back when it was convenient for you." Jenna's face flushed with anger. "You can't keep her from me forever. Watch me." Jenna stormed off, and Dylan stood there shaking with rage. When he got back to the truck, Vanessa could see it on his face. "What happened?" "She wants unsupervised visits, and she's threatening to take me to court if I say no." Vanessa's jaw tightened. "Then let her. You have a lawyer, you have documentation. She doesn't have a case. But what if she does? What if a judge decides Emma needs her mother in her life and I'm the one being unreasonable? Then we fight. But you can't give in just because you're scared, Dylan. Emma needs you to protect her. Dylan knew she was right, but that did not make it any less terrifying. Over the next few days, Dylan could not stop thinking about Jenna's threat. He talked to Patricia again, and she reiterated that his case was strong but warned him that family court was unpredictable. Dylan started gathering documentation like she suggested, photos of Emma's school events that Jenna had missed, emails and texts showing she had not tried to contact Emma in years, records showing she had not paid child support. But the stress was eating him alive. He was short-tempered at work, distracted at home, and Vanessa could see it taking a toll on him. "You need to take care of yourself," Vanessa said one night as they sat on Dylan's couch. "You're running yourself into the ground." "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You barely sleep, you're not eating, and you're carrying all of this alone." "I'm not alone. I have you." Vanessa took his hand. "I know, but I can't fix this for you, Dylan. All I can do is be here." Dylan looked at her, and for the first time in days, he felt some of the tension ease. "I don't know what I'd do without you." "You're not going to have to find out." Dylan pulled her close, and they sat there in silence, holding each other. And for a moment, Dylan let himself believe that maybe, with Vanessa by his side, he could get through this. 2 weeks later, Jenna followed through on her threat. Dylan received a letter from her lawyer formally requesting joint custody and unsupervised visitation. Dylan read the letter 3 times, his hands shaking, before he called Patricia. "She's serious," Patricia said. "We need to respond, and we need to be ready to go to court if it comes to that." "How long will this take?" "Months, maybe longer. Family court moves slowly." Dylan felt like he was drowning. He called Vanessa, and she came over immediately. When she arrived, Dylan was sitting at the kitchen table with his head in his hands. "I can't do this," Dylan said. "I can't lose her, Vanessa. I can't." Vanessa sat down beside him and pulled him into a hug. "You're not going to lose her. I promise." "You can't promise that." "Yes, I can, because I'm going to help you fight, whatever it takes." Dylan pulled back and looked at her. "Why are you doing this? This isn't your fight." "Yes, it is. Because I love you, Dylan, and I love Emma, and I'm not going to let Jenna take her away from you." Dylan felt tears sting his eyes, and he pulled Vanessa close again. He did not say anything because he did not trust his voice, but he held her tight, and he let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, they were going to be okay. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. In the meantime, Dylan continued the supervised visits with Jenna, even though every second of them made him want to scream. He documented everything. Every time Jenna was late, every time she seemed distracted, every time Emma asked to leave early. He hated doing it, hated turning his daughter's life into evidence, but he did it anyway because he had no choice. Mason noticed the strain too. One afternoon at work, he pulled Dylan aside. "You look like hell, man," Mason said. "Thanks. I'm serious. What's going on?" Dylan hesitated, then told him about Jenna and the custody battle. Mason's face darkened. "Are you kidding me? She just shows up after 3 years and thinks she can take Emma?" "That's what she's trying to do." "That's insane. What does Vanessa say?" "She's been helping me. She's been amazing, actually." Mason was quiet for a moment, then said, "I'm sorry I gave you such a hard time about you two. I get it now. She really cares about you." Dylan felt a lump form in his throat. "Yeah, she does." "And you care about her?" "Yeah." Mason clapped him on the shoulder. "Then you fight for both of them, Emma and Vanessa. Don't let Jenna take either of them away from you." Dylan nodded, and for the first time in weeks, he felt like he had an ally. The night before the court hearing, Dylan could not sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling, running through every possible scenario in his head. He thought about Emma, about what would happen if the judge sided with Jenna. He thought about Vanessa, about how much she had given up to be with him. And he thought about himself, about whether he was strong enough to survive losing everything he had fought so hard to protect. Around 2 in the morning, his phone buzzed. It was a text from Vanessa. "Vanessa, can't sleep either. Want to talk?" Dylan called her, and she answered on the first ring. "Hey, Vanessa said softly. Hey, you okay? No, me neither. I keep thinking about tomorrow. Yeah, me too. They were quiet for a moment, and then Vanessa said, No matter what happens, we're going to get through this. You know that, right? I don't know anything anymore. I do. I know you're the best father Emma could ever have. I know you've given her everything. And I know that any judge who sees that is going to rule in your favor. Dylan closed his eyes. What if they don't? Then we appeal, and we keep fighting until we win. Dylan felt something ease in his chest. I don't deserve you. Yes, you do. And tomorrow, you're going to walk into that courtroom and prove it. Dylan smiled for the first time in days. I love you. I love you too. They stayed on the phone until Dylan finally fell asleep. Vanessa's voice, the last thing he heard before the world went dark. Dylan woke up at 5 in the morning, his stomach already in knots. He had not eaten anything substantial in 2 days, and the thought of breakfast made him nauseous. He showered, put on the one decent suit he owned, a gray one he had bought for a funeral years ago, and stared at himself in the mirror. He looked tired, older than 32, like a man who had been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for far too long. Vanessa picked him up at 7. She was wearing a navy blue dress and looked calm in a way Dylan envied. She reached over and squeezed his hand as he climbed into the passenger seat. You ready? She asked. No. Good. That means you care. Dylan did not respond. He just stared out the window as they drove to the courthouse, watching the city wake up around them. Normal people going to normal jobs, living normal lives. Dylan wondered what that felt like. Patricia was waiting for them outside the courthouse, a leather briefcase in one hand and a coffee in the other. She looked every bit the seasoned attorney, and Dylan felt a small flicker of hope that maybe she could actually pull this off. How are you feeling? Patricia asked. Like I'm going to throw up. That's normal. Just remember what we talked about. Answer the questions honestly. Don't get defensive, and let me handle the legal arguments. Your job is to show the judge that you're a good father. That's it. Dylan nodded, even though his mind was racing with 1,000 worst-case scenarios. They walked into the courthouse together, Vanessa's hand never leaving Dylan's. The courtroom was smaller than Dylan had expected, just a few rows of wooden benches and a judge's bench at the front. Jenna was already there with her lawyer, a man in an expensive suit who looked like he ate cases like this for breakfast. Jenna glanced at Dylan as he walked in, and for a moment their eyes met. Dylan could not read her expression. She looked nervous, maybe even regretful, but Dylan did not care. She had brought them here. She had forced this fight. The judge entered, a woman in her 50s with graying hair and sharp eyes. Everyone stood, and then the hearing began. Jenna's lawyer went first. He painted Jenna as a young mother who had made mistakes but was now ready to step up and be the parent Emma deserved. He talked about Jenna's therapy, her stable job, her commitment to rebuilding her relationship with her daughter. He made it sound noble, like Jenna was some kind of hero for finally deciding to care. Dylan sat there, his jaw clenched, his hands balled into fists under the table. Vanessa placed her hand on his knee, a silent reminder to stay calm. Then it was Patricia's turn. She did not pull punches. She laid out the timeline of Jenna's absence, the lack of child support, the missed birthdays and school events. She presented Dylan's documentation, photos of Emma's science fairs and soccer games, emails showing Dylan had reached out to Jenna multiple times with no response, records showing he had been Emma's sole provider for 5 years. Mr. Carter has been the only consistent parent in Emma's life, Patricia said, her voice steady and confident. While Miss Torres was absent, Mr. Carter was there, every single day. He has proven himself to be a devoted, responsible father. And while we appreciate that Ms. Torres is seeking to re-enter her daughter's life, the court must consider what is in Emma's best interest, and that is stability, consistency, the love and care that Mr. Carter has provided without fail. Dylan felt his chest tighten. He had not realized how much he needed to hear someone say those words out loud. The judge asked Jenna some questions. Why had she left? Why had she waited 3 years to come back? What had changed? Jenna answered carefully, her voice shaking slightly. She talked about being overwhelmed, about not knowing how to be a mother, about realizing too late what she had given up. She talked about therapy and growth and wanting to make things right. The judge's expression was unreadable. Then the judge asked Dylan to take the stand. Dylan's legs felt weak as he walked to the front of the courtroom. He sat down, placed his hand on the Bible for the oath, and tried to steady his breathing. Patricia asked him basic questions first. How long had he been Emma's primary caregiver? What was their daily routine? How was Emma doing in school? Dylan answered mechanically, his mind still racing. But then Patricia asked a question that made Dylan's throat tighten. Mr. Carter, can you tell the court what it was like when Ms. Torres left? Dylan hesitated. He looked at Jenna, then at Vanessa, then at the judge. It was the hardest thing I've ever been through, Dylan said quietly. Emma was 2 years old. She didn't understand why her mom was gone. She asked about her every day for months, and I didn't know what to tell her. I couldn't explain it without making Jenna sound like the bad guy, and I didn't want Emma to grow up hating her mother, so I just told her that her mom loved her but couldn't be there right now. And I tried to be enough for both of us. And were you? Enough? Dylan's voice cracked. I don't know. I tried. I've been trying every single day for 5 years, but I'm not perfect. I've made mistakes. I've lost my temper. I've forgotten to pack her lunch. I've been late picking her up from school, but I've never left her. I've never made her feel like she wasn't wanted, and I've never stopped trying to be the father she deserves. Patricia nodded. Thank you, Mr. Carter. Then Jenna's lawyer stood up for cross-examination. Mr. Carter, do you believe that Emma deserves to have a relationship with her mother? Dylan felt the trap in the question. If he said no, he would look vindictive. If he said yes, he would undermine his own case. I believe Emma deserves to have people in her life who show up for her, Dylan said carefully. Consistently. Not just when it's convenient. But you're not opposed to Emma seeing her mother. I'm opposed to Emma getting hurt again. If Jenna is serious about being a mother, then she needs to prove it. Not with words, with actions. Over time. So you're saying you don't trust Ms. Torres? No, I don't. Jenna's lawyer paused, then said, Isn't it true, Mr. Carter, that you've recently started a relationship with a woman who has no children of her own? Someone who has no experience raising a child? Dylan's stomach dropped. He glanced at Vanessa, whose face had gone pale. I have a partner, yes, but I don't see what that has to do with... Isn't it possible that your judgment is clouded by this new relationship? That you're prioritizing your own happiness over what's best for Emma? Patricia stood up immediately. Objection, relevance. The judge looked at Jenna's lawyer. Where are you going with this? Your Honor, I'm simply suggesting that Mr. Carter's life has changed significantly in recent months, and that perhaps Miss Torres's desire to be more involved is not as unreasonable as he's making it sound. The judge considered this, then said, I'll allow it, but get to the point. Jenna's lawyer turned back to Dylan. How long have you been in this relationship? About 6 months. And does this woman spend time with Emma? Yes. Unsupervised? Sometimes. So you trust a woman you've known for 6 months to spend time alone with your daughter, but you don't trust Emma's own mother? Dylan felt his anger rising, but he forced himself to stay calm. Vanessa has shown up for Emma. She's been there when Emma needed help with homework. She's been there when Emma was sick. She's been there for soccer games and science fairs. Jenna hasn't been there for any of that. Yet. Ever, Dylan corrected. Jenna hasn't been there ever, not once in 5 years. Jenna's lawyer smirked slightly, and Dylan realized he had let his anger show. He took a breath and tried to rein it in. No further questions, Jenna's lawyer said, sitting back down. Dylan returned to his seat, his hand shaking. Vanessa reached over and squeezed his hand, but Dylan could not look at her. He felt like he had just blown the entire case. The judge called Jenna to the stand next. She answered questions about her job, her living situation, her plans for Emma. She was careful and composed, and Dylan hated how sympathetic she sounded. Then Patricia cross-examined her. Ms. Torres, you mentioned that you've been in therapy. How long have you been going? About 6 months. And in those 6 months, how many times have you reached out to Mr. Carter to ask about Emma? Jenna hesitated. I wanted to get myself in a better place first before... So the answer is 0? Jenna's jaw tightened. I thought it was better to wait until I was ready. Ready for what? To be a mother? Because you were a mother 5 years ago when you left. Emma didn't stop being your daughter just because you walked away. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you only became interested in being a mother again once you got your life together. Once it was convenient for you. That's not fair. What's not fair, Ms. Torres, is that Emma spent 5 years wondering why her mother didn't want her. What's not fair is that Mr. Carter had to raise her alone while you were figuring yourself out. What's not fair is that you think 6 months of therapy erases 5 years of absence. Jenna's eyes filled with tears, but Patricia did not let up. Have you paid any child support in the last 5 years? No. Have you sent Emma any birthday cards, any Christmas presents, any phone calls? No. So you've contributed nothing to her life, and yet you think you deserve joint custody. I'm her mother. Being a mother is more than biology, Ms. Torres. It's showing up every single day, even when it's hard, even when you're tired, even when you don't feel ready. And you didn't do that. Mr. Carter did. Patricia sat down, and Jenna returned to her seat, her face red and her hands trembling. The judge took a short recess, and Dylan stepped outside the courtroom with Vanessa. He leaned against the wall, his chest tight, his mind racing. I screwed it up, Dylan said. I let him get to me. You didn't screw anything up. You were honest. That's what matters. But what if the judge thinks, stop, don't do this to yourself. We don't know what the judge is thinking. All we can do is wait. Dylan closed his eyes and tried to breathe. Vanessa wrapped her arms around him, and Dylan let himself lean into her, drawing strength from her presence. When they returned to the courtroom, the judge was already seated. She looked at both parties, her expression serious. I've reviewed the evidence and heard testimony from both sides, the judge said. This is not an easy decision. On one hand, I believe that children benefit from having both parents in their lives when possible. On the other hand, I also believe that stability and consistency are paramount to a child's well-being. Dylan's heart was pounding so hard, he thought it might burst out of his chest. Miss Torres, I commend you for seeking help and wanting to be part of your daughter's life again. However, I cannot ignore the fact that you have been absent for 5 years. You have not provided financial support. You have not maintained contact. And while I appreciate that you are working on yourself, the reality is that Emma has built a life with her father, a stable, loving life. And I am not willing to disrupt that based solely on your recent efforts. Dylan felt his knees go weak. Therefore, I am granting Mr. Carter full physical and legal custody of Emma. Ms. Torres, you will be granted supervised visitation twice a month for the next 6 months. At the end of that period, we will revisit the arrangement and determine if unsupervised visitation is appropriate. But make no mistake, if you fail to show up for even one of those visits, your visitation rights will be revoked. Do you understand? Jenna nodded, tears streaming down her face. Mr. Carter, I expect you to facilitate these visits in good faith. Emma deserves the opportunity to know her mother, even if it's uncomfortable for you. Can you do that? Dylan nodded, his voice barely a whisper. Yes, Your Honor. Good. This court is adjourned. The gavel came down, and Dylan felt like he could finally breathe again. Outside the courthouse, Dylan stood on the steps and let the reality of what had just happened sink in. He had won. Emma was staying with him. Jenna had not taken her away. Vanessa threw her arms around him, and Dylan held her tight, his eyes stinging with tears he refused to let fall. You did it, Vanessa said. You fought for her, and you won. We did it, Dylan corrected. I couldn't have done this without you. Patricia joined them, a small smile on her face. Congratulations, Dylan. You were incredible in there. Thank you for everything. Just doing my job, but for what it's worth, I think the judge made the right call. Dylan nodded, still too overwhelmed to fully process it. As they walked to the parking lot, Dylan's phone buzzed. It was a text from his mother. Mom, how did it go? Dylan smiled and typed back. Dylan, I won. Emma's staying with me. Mom, I knew you would. I'm so proud of you. Dylan felt his chest tighten again, but this time it was not fear. It was relief. Gratitude. Love. When they got back to the car, Vanessa turned to Dylan. What do you want to do now? I want to pick up Emma and take her home. Then let's go. Yeah. Dylan picked Emma up from his mother's house that afternoon. Linda had kept her busy all day, so Emma would not worry. And when Dylan walked in, Emma ran to him and threw her arms around his waist. Dad, did you win? Dylan crouched down and pulled her into a hug. Yeah, sweetheart, I won. So I get to stay with you? Yeah, you get to stay with me. Emma grinned, and Dylan felt like his heart might explode. Can Vanessa come over tonight? Emma asked. Dylan laughed. Yeah, she can come over. That evening, the three of them had dinner together, Dylan, Vanessa, and Emma. They ordered pizza and ate it on the living room floor, while Emma told them about the dinosaur book Linda had been reading to her. Vanessa listened with the same intensity she brought to everything, asking questions and making Emma laugh. After Emma went to bed, Dylan and Vanessa sat on the couch, exhausted but content. I keep waiting for the other shoe to drop, Dylan said. Like this is too good to be true. It's not too good to be true. You earned this. I don't know about that. I do. Dylan looked at her, and for the first time in months, he allowed himself to fully believe that maybe he deserved to be happy. I love you, Dylan said. I know I don't say it enough, but I do. You've given me so much, Vanessa. You've given me hope. You've given me strength. You've given me a reason to believe that my life can be more than just surviving. Vanessa's eyes filled with tears. You've given me that too. Before I met you, I was just going through the motions. Building a company, checking boxes, convincing myself that success was enough. But it wasn't. I was lonely, Dylan, and you made me feel like I wasn't alone anymore. Dylan pulled her close, and they sat there in silence, holding each other. The next few weeks settled into a new normal. Jenna showed up for her supervised visits, and Dylan kept his promise to facilitate them in good faith. It was not easy. There were moments when Dylan wanted to cancel, when he wanted to tell Jenna that she did not deserve Emma's time, but he did not. Because as much as he hated admitting it, Vanessa was right. Emma deserved the chance to know her mother, even if it was complicated. Emma seemed to handle it better than Dylan expected. She was cautious with Jenna, never fully letting her guard down, but she was polite and kind. And slowly, over the course of several visits, Dylan could see Emma starting to open up. It was not the same relationship Dylan had with Emma. It probably never would be. But it was something. And that was enough. Vanessa continued to integrate into Dylan's life in ways that felt natural and right. She started keeping a change of clothes at Dylan's apartment. She showed up to Emma's soccer games without being asked. She helped with homework and made dinner on nights when Dylan was too exhausted to function. And Dylan realized that what they had was not just a relationship, it was a partnership. One evening, about 2 months after the court hearing, Vanessa asked Dylan a question that caught him completely off guard. Have you ever thought about getting married again? Dylan looked at her, surprised. Where did that come from? I don't know. I've just been thinking about it. About us. About what the future looks like. Dylan was quiet for a moment. He had thought about it, more than he wanted to admit. But the idea of marriage still scared him. His first marriage had ended in disaster, and he was not sure he had it in him to try again. I don't know, Dylan said honestly. Marriage didn't work out so well for me the first time. I'm not Jenna. I know, but I'm still scared. Vanessa nodded, and Dylan could see the hurt in her eyes. I understand. I'm not trying to pressure you. I just wanted to know where your head was at. Dylan reached over and took her hand. I love you, Vanessa, and I want to be with you. I'm just not ready to make that kind of commitment yet, but that doesn't mean I won't be someday. Vanessa smiled, though it did not quite reach her eyes. Okay, I can live with that. But Dylan could tell she was disappointed, and it ate at him for the rest of the night. 2 weeks later, Dylan was putting Emma to bed when she asked him a question that stopped him in his tracks. Dad, are you going to marry Vanessa? Dylan looked at her, surprised. Why are you asking that? Because I like her, and I think she makes you happy, and I want her to be part of our family. Dylan felt his throat tighten. I like her too, sweetheart. A lot. Then why don't you marry her? It's not that simple. Why not? Dylan did not know how to explain it to a 7-year-old. How could he tell Emma that he was scared of getting hurt again? That he was terrified of committing to someone and then watching it all fall apart? I just need more time, Dylan said. But I promise I'll think about it, okay? Emma nodded, satisfied. Okay, but I think you should marry her. She's really nice. Dylan kissed her forehead. I'll keep that in mind. That night, Dylan lay in bed and thought about what Emma had said. And the more he thought about it, the more he realized she was right. Vanessa had been there for him through everything. She had fought for him, supported him, loved him in ways he had not thought possible, and he was letting his fear hold him back from something that could be incredible. The next morning, Dylan called Mason. "Hey man, I need a favor." "Sure, what's up?" "I need your help picking out an engagement ring." There was a long pause on the other end of the line, and then Mason laughed. "Are you serious?" "Yeah, I'm serious." "About time. Vanessa's going to lose her mind." "I hope so." Dylan proposed to Vanessa 3 weeks later. He did not plan some elaborate romantic gesture. He did not take her to a fancy restaurant or hire a photographer. He just asked her one evening after Emma went to bed, in the same living room where they had spent so many nights talking and laughing and holding each other. "I've been thinking about what you said," Dylan started, his heart pounding. "About marriage. And I was scared, Vanessa. I'm still scared. But I realize that I'm more scared of losing you than I am of taking a chance on us." Vanessa's eyes widened and Dylan pulled out the ring, a simple band with a small diamond that he had picked out with Mason's help. "I don't have much to offer you," Dylan continued. "I'm not rich, I'm not successful, I'm just a guy who works in logistics and is trying his best to raise his daughter. But I love you. And I want to spend the rest of my life proving to you that you made the right choice when you chose me." Vanessa's hands were shaking and tears were streaming down her face. "Dylan, will you marry me?" Vanessa did not hesitate. "Yes. Yes, absolutely yes." Dylan slipped the ring onto her finger, and Vanessa threw her arms around him, laughing and crying at the same time. And Dylan held her, feeling more certain than he had ever felt about anything in his life. They got married 6 months later in a small ceremony with just their closest family and friends. Mason was Dylan's best man, and Emma was the flower girl. Linda cried through the entire ceremony, and Dylan caught Vanessa wiping her eyes more than once. It was not a perfect wedding. The flowers were slightly wilted because the florist had gotten the delivery time wrong. The caterer forgot to bring the vegetarian option, and halfway through the reception, Emma spilled juice all over her dress. But it was theirs, real and imperfect and full of love. Jenna showed up to her visits consistently for the next year, and eventually the judge granted her unsupervised visitation. Dylan still did not trust her completely, but he could see that she was trying. And that was something. Vanessa officially relocated her company's headquarters to Sacramento, cutting down her travel significantly. She still had to go to the city occasionally, but she was home most nights, and that made all the difference. She and Dylan bought a house together, a small place with a yard where Emma could play, and a room for Vanessa to use as an office. Dylan stayed at his job, and though it was not glamorous, it was stable. And stability was what he needed. What they all needed. Emma thrived. She made friends, excelled in school, and continued to obsess over dinosaurs. She called Vanessa Nessa, a nickname that stuck, and the bond between them grew stronger every day. Vanessa was not Emma's mother. She never tried to be. But she was something just as important. She was family. One evening, about a year after the wedding, Dylan stood in the backyard watching Emma and Vanessa build a fort out of old blankets and lawn chairs. Emma was laughing, and Vanessa was laughing too, and Dylan felt a contentment he had not known was possible. Mason walked over, holding a beer. "You did good, man." Dylan smiled. "Yeah, I did. You know, when you first told me you were dating my sister, I thought you were out of your mind." "I was. But I was wrong. You two are good together. She's happy. You're happy. Emma's happy. That's all that matters." Dylan nodded, and they stood there in comfortable silence, watching the two most important people in Dylan's life. Later that night, after Emma went to bed, Dylan and Vanessa sat on the porch, looking up at the stars. "Do you ever think about how different things could have been?" Vanessa asked. "If you hadn't come to Mason's dinner party? If I hadn't sent you that friend request? All the time. Do you regret any of it?" Dylan looked at her, at the woman who had changed his life in ways he still could not fully put into words. Not for a second. Vanessa leaned her head against his shoulder and Dylan wrapped his arm around her. "I spent so many years thinking I had to have everything figured out," Dylan said, "that I had to be perfect to be worthy of love. But I was wrong. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up, even when it's hard, even when you're scared, even when you don't know what you're doing. It's about choosing each other every single day. And I choose you, Vanessa, today and every day after." Vanessa looked up at him, her eyes shining. I choose you too. And in that moment, Dylan realized something he had been too afraid to believe for most of his life. He was enough. Not because he had achieved anything extraordinary or because he had everything figured out, but because he had people who loved him, because he had built a life that mattered, because he had taken every broken piece of himself and turned it into something whole. Life was not perfect. It never would be. There would be more fights, more challenges, more moments of doubt. But Dylan was not facing them alone anymore. He had Vanessa, he had Emma, he had a family, and that was more than enough.